Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to our exchange talk, the RCS Exchange Talk, the first one of 2022. My name is Laura Bissell, and I'm interim head of contemporary performance practice, and I'm also lecturer in research at the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland. And I am absolutely delighted to welcome Sinead Hargan and Anya Sirina this evening for their talk. You can pop your cameras on now as we're about to begin. And we're going to be hearing from Anya and Sinead about their Bruce Millar Fellowship, Seeking Spaces Eroded this evening. And I have had the absolute joy and privilege to be one of their mentors on this project, which has been happening since September 2020, no, 2019. So I'm going to hand over in a moment a few housekeeping things. Unfortunately, we do not have a ESL interpreter this evening, but the talk will be captioned. And also, we would love to have any questions from our audience. So feel free to pop any questions that you might have in the Q&A box, and we will come to them in a moment. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Anya and Sinead. Welcome, and over to you.
Hello, thanks Laura for that. I'm Sinead and this is Anya. We've decided to do our exchange talk on one screen just because we felt it would flow a little bit easier and we prefer to work in person than on screen, as I'm sure like a lot of people feel. So welcome to our exchange talk. Seeking Spaces Eroded, a reflection on a year of performance collaboration at tidal sites across Scotland. We are the Bruce Millar Fellowship awardees for 2020/2021. The Bruce Millar Graduate Fellowship is an artist's development award for recent graduates of the dance, drama and production schools at RCS. This award offers support from the Knowledge Exchange team and a £10,000 grant towards our project. Our proposal was for a year-long research and development project. So in this talk, we will reflect on a year of collaborative performance making, research and exploration. We will map out our thoughts and ideas from the start of the project until now. So we've spent the last year practicing collaboration with one another, with tidal sites and with the more than human, attempting to be in continuous dialogue with all. Through situating this performance research at tidal sites, where the points between sea and land shift, we were required to adapt and be influenced by its changing but steady nature. Working in these spaces over a year of various lockdowns has encouraged us to practice slow making and responsiveness. Our approach became tidal. We came in and out of the project but stayed with it, allowing ourselves and the work to be fluid yet rooted. We were seeking to reject the current time cycles that are placed upon us through capitalist systems. So we began to tune into ecological time cycles and allowed these to inform and guide our work. Halfway through this talk, we will also lead a small reflective task with you all. Feel free to participate in whichever way you feel most comfortable. The purpose of the task is to share some of our practice in a more experiential way, rather than just telling you all about it. And then in the talk, we'll also reflect on the bigger questions surrounding the current systems and requirements to be an artist, as well as our own personal performance making processes, and these being held throughout the year by ephemerality, time and the tide.
So we are aware that it is completely impossible for us to share a year's worth of research in this short window of time. So we're going to focus on some of the key moments and the questions we started with and some of the questions we have now. So this project came out of a want to be out of the studio and offline. So sharing in this medium does feel a little bit strange and not quite fitting. But anyway, this talk is to help us share and disseminate some of our work and some of our ideas. And we hope that you get a little insight into our practice and feel inspired in some kind of way, if that's just querying your own working rhythms or collaborative practices you may have, or just a visit to the coast. So we are 2019 graduates of the Contemporary Performance Practice course at the Conservatoire, for those who may not know us. And we've been collaborating since around 2017. And we both have our own solo practices outside of this project too. And so our collaborative practice has shifted and evolved over these years. So we made a piece of work in 2018 called Land Claim. This is a still image from the film. Land Claim is a collaborative film and live performance devised by ourselves and Yasmin Moya. We were looking at narratives around women and wild lands, and the film focuses on our processes and the conversations in between our performances rather than just the performance itself. So deeply rooted in this work was the desire to find an intuitive, process-led approach to making contemporary performance.
This is an image from Work, a site-specific performance at Civic House that Anya and I made in 2019. It was the last piece of work that we made at uni. We'd been thinking a lot about life after graduating, our jobs in the service industry, impending funding applications, looming rejections, and our fears for the future. We were surrounded by work, and we were worried about work, and all we talked about was work, so we made a show about work. And this is when I think we really began to interrogate like the learned pressures of being productive, of like working hard, working hours, working days, working weeks, 9 to 5, weekends, and how these labour structures are relatively new when we look at how long humans have been on the planet for.
Yeah. So by the time we graduated, we were really beginning to find rhythms of working together. We are good friends, and we have come through a 4-year, quite intense uni course and watched our solo practices develop and mature over this time. So we know each other's work inside out, and we share the ways we like to work with each other. We share our ambitions for the future. We talk through the challenges we face, the things we're learning to navigate in an art world that can often feel big and intimidating to new graduates. So we talk about the work we like, we share the work we like, and we go to see work together. So this project was born out of these conversations.
Yeah, so we wrote our project proposal in the first lockdown at the start of summer 2020. We were in an in-between time, not really feeling like artists and not sure about what opportunities to apply for because we hadn't really developed our practice out with an institution. And we felt like a little bit directionless. And we knew we wanted time to explore our practices and what it means to collaborate. We were interested in the sea, in intuitive working, being responsive to something bigger than us. And we also considered what we like to do as friends together. So we planned an environment-based project. We were excited about the possibilities of exploring performance practice at tidal sites, both these things being time-based and ephemeral. It's also important to mention that during the year, we spoke a lot about the weight of the climate crisis and the changing seas. And even though that doesn't feature heavily in our sharing today, our methodologies are aware of the climate crisis and they come from an attempt to reject all of the things that have led to that crisis. The ecology of the sea and its decline seems invisible to us often, and we can only really experience the sea in short moments from its edge and from its surface. We're also aware that the sea holds a lot. It holds trauma and it holds histories, and it means different things to different people. And that can be a vast and interesting discussion in itself, but today we're going to focus on the qualities of our work that happen when we work in tidal sites in these spaces and how that influences the structures that we work in.
Mm-hmm. So practicing collaboration. We were practicing collaboration, collaborating with one another, with tidal sites and with the more than human, attempting to be in continuous dialogue with all. And it felt fitting to be working in response to water, as hydrofeminist scholar Astrida Neimanis writes, water is the most collaborative substance. It draws things into it. It collects different beings and brings them together. Astrida Neimanis's ideas set the tone at the beginning of the project, and we'll return to some of those ideas in a moment. But we want to talk about an article that Laura Bissell shared with us. Laura was our mentor, and she shared with us The Rock, the Butterfly, the Moon and the Cloud, Notes on Dramaturgy in an Ecological Age by Augusto Corrieri, which heavily influenced us. In this article, Corrieri writes about pieces of art and performance in which the artist has attempted to remove the human from centre stage. So he examines ways in which dramaturgy might be rethought in the current context of the ecological age or the Anthropocene, when the co-presence of the more than human is profoundly questioning the anthropocentrism that founded the very discipline of theatre itself. It's a really great article, which we can link again or write in the chat if someone wants to take note. So yeah, these ideas became our inquiry on day trips to Irvine and Barassi Beach on the west coast of Scotland. We were asking, how do we remove the human from centre stage? How can we let the landscape perform for itself? How can we merely highlight the dramaturgies at play here rather than disrupt them or impose on them? How can both the environment and us perform simultaneously, non-hierarchically? What are the micro and macro dramaturgies of this site?
We had loads of questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we let the wind move us. We let the birds move us. The more than human determined our movements. We let them play throughout our bodies. And when the wind blew, we would edge closer to the sea. When the birds flew across the skyline, we would raise our arms. We stood at the edge of the sea and performed with the more than human until the sea reached our ankles. The more than human determined the length of our performances. The site determined our audience, passers-by, dogs, and other animals.
We had to be responsive to the time we were working in a global pandemic, in lockdown. There was an extended period of time where we obviously couldn't get to the sea. Jo Kinnear, a contemporary performance practice student, was on placement with us during this time. And so we took trips to Pollock Country Park, and Astrida Neimanis's hydrofeminist theories grounded us. We embraced the exploration of journeys of water. Neimanis reminds us that the water that flows through me flows through you, that we are all connected. We traced the water in our bodies and in our immediate landscapes. We imagined and followed the water's movement. When does the White Cart River become the sea? How does working with water, how can we work with water without anthropomorphizing it?
We trip up over that word every single time. Yeah. That was a difficult time as well.
Yeah.
It was this time last year, and I think we kind of became quite obsessed with like being stuck, I guess, in like a 5-mile radius and not being able to get to the sea, and finding other ways of like tracing the water to the sea.
Mm-hmm.
This is some photos of us in Pollock Park. So we're now going to move on to a creative task, or a kind of reflective task, that will involve an audio piece recorded at the time that we couldn't reach the sea, which was I checked the date on it, and it's like the 13th of January 2021, so almost exactly a year ago. and it kind of reflects how we felt at the time. Before we share this, though, we would like to kind of do a little exercise grounding ourselves in our bodies. This is a practice we do whenever we arrive at a site. The practice changes, but often involves breathing or drawing with our eyes closed to tune into other senses. I think, yeah, Anya, is going to lead this.
Yeah. So what we'd like you to do is, we'd like to start before we do this exercise just by breathing together, actually. So I invite everyone to close their eyes and just try not to change your breath, but notice where it is in your body. Notice the sounds in the room. Notice the sounds that are really close by, but also really far away. And just notice where the breath is in your body. Where is it in relation to the parts of your body that are touching the seat or a floor? And now see if you can really deepen that breath or extend it and take the longest inhale you've taken all day. And a long exhale. And take a long inhale again. And on the exhale, maybe let something go that you want to let go today. This could be just, fully sighing something out. And now see if you can, on your next inhale, imagine the breath coming from your toes, breathing in from your toes and filling up your whole body all the way till the top of your head. Trace the breath. And on the exhale, let it leave your body from the top of your head all the way down to your feet. And you're going to do this in your own time. Try and really extend the breath and do this 5 times before we move on to the next thing.
So we're just going to play this little bit of audio, which was a kind of text that we made. I guess it was like a collection of different texts actually that I've kind of put together. I think if you, maybe listen to it with your eyes closed, I think, or looking away from the screen at least, and just think, let the journey kind of take you wherever you want to, but maybe think about how it manifests in your body, or if you feel it anywhere in your body.
Yeah, and if any kind of movement comes to your body through listening to these words, then just allow that to happen. And if not, then it doesn't happen. Yeah, just be responsive to what you're hearing.
You are not aware of me, but I am aware of of part of you. You move at a pace I cannot comprehend. I move. You hide secrets. I hide secrets. You create your own lines, and I trace them with my feet. You don't know I'm here. You change and shift. You are quite still, and I can see right through you. But there's darkness, and on the surface there's slight movement. Are you trembling? A little. Very gently rocking from one side to the other. I think the calmness of you is unsettling and can't be trusted. I can see myself back in you, and I'm quite shaky. You're not as still as I thought you were at first. And I think there are more things living inside you than I can see. I think there's life inside you, but it's just invisible to my weak eyes. I think you change a lot. You're not like this in summer. I've seen you in summer. You're much brighter and full of life. You seem stagnant today. You seem not like yourself. This is a strange version of you, like a solid version. And you are usually more fluid. I'm watching you. You're moving now, swirling, dancing. Maybe you never really sit still. You can move me. You're transparent. I retreat to you when I feel sad. You help me grieve, but I think I'm grieving you. You are alive, just like me. You come and go. You rise and you fall, and things live inside you. And you keep hold of things. I can't trace things on you because nothing can leave a mark on your surface. When I go, I hope to return to you. You're shifting. Your force scares me, but your repetition comforts me. Now I can see cracks on your surface, the patterns of you meeting other things. And you're not the same all the way through. You get deeper in the middle, dying life. I could go through you, but I think I'll stop there. I think if we want to maybe take... You are not aware of me. I don't want to listen to that again. Maybe take a moment to respond in the chat. You don't have to respond as well, but if you want to respond with a sentence or anything that you're thinking of after that, then you're welcome to now. We'll maybe just take a minute to do that and then move on. You're also welcome to respond later or just keep it for yourself as well. That text was kind of made from between, I think I said this, a collection of text that myself and Anya and Joe, the student on, our lovely friend and student on project placement with us, all wrote or recorded while watching water. And it was quite interesting. I think we were all in different places when we recorded it. And I remember part of the thing that I recorded was going to the pond at Maxwell Park, and it was completely frozen over, which was quite interesting. Just, I guess, when you're thinking about water as a collaborator and its different forms as well. It's not always fluid, is it? So this, I think, thanks for listening to that and joining in. So fast forward to September last year, and we spent 2 weeks on residency at Dance North in Findhorn. We were thinking a lot about this idea of rejecting current time cycles that are placed upon us through capitalist systems, and tuning into ecological time cycles and allowing them to inform and guide our work. So we spent 2 weeks with Dance North, and we worked on Findhorn Beach, where the sea comes in very far. The tide times dictated when we were able to work. High tide and low tide times shift each day. So each working day varied. The times that we could work varied. We set ourselves various writing and reading tasks, but the majority of the work ended up being in performance and action-based. We were interested in tracing the length of the beach. So this image is of this durational task that we carried out one day. We wanted to notice the changes in the space as the sun and the sea shifted in their positions. We wanted to trace our movements, but we're interested in these traces being marks that complemented and worked with the site and that would not last. We started at low tide. Findhorn Beach is about 6 or 7 miles long. Anya started at the east tip and I started at the west tip. We filled our backpacks with large pebbles and walked the length of the beach, dropping a pebble between the tide line and the edge of the beach every 6 steps or so. And this exercise lasted around 3 hours until we finally met in the middle. I think our thoughts drifted in and out of the task, and we took our time. There was a lot of value in committing the day to like one simple task and knowing that we were both making the same journey and would eventually meet. It felt like there was a lot of kindness and care in this day. Many passers-by stopped and asked what we were doing, and we really enjoyed these moments too. These kind of mini discussions around things just happening and that being enough in itself. Our approach began, we began to take a kind of tidal approach. During our time at Dance North, we spent a day with Rosemary Lee, a choreographer and dance artist that has been practicing for over 30 years. And we've spoken a lot about Rosemary's work influencing this project. If you don't know Rosemary Lee's work, you should, and are interested in dance and ecological artists, I guess, then she's a great person to check out. The conversations we had that day covered a multitude of methods and challenges artists come up against. But what stood out most for us was the conversations around slow making. When we say slow making or slow working, we don't necessarily mean working slowly. What we mean is staying with something for a really long time. Not all, or we discovered or spoke about, not all work having to be new and staying with the same project for a long time. You can return to it, add to it, and rework it at any point, and the value being found in the process, not always the product. A developing methodology of tidal rhythmic working started to emerge from our year. As I mentioned, our approach has become tidal and perhaps had elements of tidal rhythms throughout. How can we use tidal rhythms as a structure for working? We can come in and out of projects. We can listen to our energy. We can work hard and get stuff done when it's low tide, and we can take a break, recoup and reflect, or leave the thing completely when it's high tide. We listen and observe and respond to things around us, whether that's the season, the political landscape, the pandemic, the people and places we work with, or our own internal rhythms. Drawing inspiration from these spaces, from the more than human, we felt encourages compassion in working. And we felt that the art comes from a place of connectedness. This kind of brings us to, I guess, where we are now, actually.
And we're going to close.
These are some of our performance scores from the beach at Vindhorn.
Yeah, and here's some images from a tidal island we went to on the Isle of Skye. So yeah, I guess we're gonna talk a little bit about what we're taking forward from all of this. And I guess some of the things is, well, something about questioning things a lot. You know, we're talking about rejecting certain ways of working or requirements to be artists, and time structures and deadlines and things like that, and questioning all of that and trying to pave a new way together. And peer support has been a big thing for us, and transparency and conversation, and not getting worried, because a lot of the work that we did do was our conversations and dialogues with one another, and that being the work, you know, the process is a lot of the work. So I think that's something that we're definitely going to take forward.
I think, yeah, we've really questioned and kind of constantly reassessed what our collaborative practice is, and that's really shifted over the year. I think it's not that we make work together, it's that we kind of research work and support one another as artists, and it's like a really specific collaborative relationship that we've developed over like a long time, and really, I think, really kind of excavated during this year. And the thing that we've come out with is what we need at the moment. And I think being an artist can feel really lonely sometimes, and having a collaborator that's there as support to talk through ideas with, to really kind of, really dissect our struggles in the art world, and it just being like a really hard place to navigate, and doesn't feel like a particularly sustainable place, or a place that you can always flourish as like an emerging artist or a recent graduate. I think, our collaborative practice is actually coming out of that more than a want to make work together.
Yeah, and I think this project was like acted as we wanted it to be a transition, or help us to transition from graduating out into the art world. So I feel like from doing this project, we've both become a lot more confident in our ideas and our approaches to making work, and saying what we need when applying for stuff. So that's definitely something that's come out of it. And yeah, this idea that the ecological artist, maybe this idea that for us, you know, this daily practice, or visiting the sea or working outdoors, is really important to us. And we're not just going to be making work about the sea, but it's about that approach, and it's about maybe this understanding of yourself and how you fit into the rest of the world, and all of that connectedness that that this has encouraged us.
Yeah, I think we've also grown a lot of confidence in, I think, what you said, like to ask, we know what to ask for, or we kind of figure out what we need quicker. And I think that's like really different from where we were 2 years ago when we graduated. And I don't think we feel directionless anymore, actually. I don't think we feel as lost as we were when we first graduated.
But I feel like throughout this year we felt lost a lot.
Yeah,
You
but I think
know?
we enjoy that bit
Yeah,
though.
yeah, yeah.
Because I think there's a difference between like just feeling lost and directionless and that being like a panic and a worry. And I think we've actually just maybe taken that and leaned into it, and we kind of enjoy being directionless or something. There's that idiom that
yeah, we were going to
like.
share what to be at sea. This idea to be discombobulated or to lose your bearings or be confused. And we kind of like that as a kind of thing that framed this whole project, as we were constantly just like, oh, where's this going? We're touching on so many different ideas. So we were constantly just at sea, maybe, which we felt was quite fitting.
Yeah. Maybe that's a nice bit to end it on.
Yes.
And we can bring Laura in now.
I'm going to stop sharing. Hello.
Thank you both so much. Hello. That was so wonderful to hear your talk. And, you know, you acknowledged at the beginning that this wouldn't be the medium because you've been working outside. But I think your images and your texts were really evoking those coastal spaces that you've been working in. So yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. I just wanted to remind our audience that you are very welcome to put any questions that you might have in the Q&A, and we will come to them in a moment. Already had some lovely responses to your task. Maybe I could kick off with something I was thinking about when you were sharing your images of your previous work that you've done together on the programme. And I was finding it very strange to sort of see you in theatre spaces because obviously we've been working on Zoom and delightfully on a beach, and the one time that restrictions allowed for us to meet at Irvine Beach. But I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about what this environment has maybe done for your making. You've talked about tidal approaches, but I was thinking about theatre spaces and how actually the sea doesn't always translate very well to those kind of spaces because it's vast and uncontainable and wet, and theatre spaces are not that. And I was just wondering, will you continue to work outside? Will you return to theatre spaces? How can you bring these kind of tidal approaches into more of how the system of art making tends to work? I would love to hear that.
I think so where we were at the start of the project, we'd obviously just graduated and been working in studio spaces for a long time, and then the pandemic happened, so we were working on Zoom quite a lot. And I think so this kind of was born out of a little bit of a like not wanting to engage with either of those spaces as well, and feeling those spaces as like quite claustrophobic spaces. So we were just like, let's get outside. But I think the way that they kind of influence the work has become less about making work about those spaces and like actual structures for working. In that, I guess, in like working structures and rhythms. And also a little bit, I think we mentioned this, of like really kind of sitting in these spaces and staying with them for a long time. You can't help but be aware of like how tiny you are and the vastness of these spaces. And I think that can be really grounding and really helpful when you start to worry about, I don't know, like a application or not getting a residency or something like that. And when you're like by the sea, it seems so much smaller. And I think that's actually really helpful when you feel a little bit overwhelmed. So I think
perspective
is pretty helpful in these spaces as well.
Yeah, and I remember when we were on residency at Dance North, we had, I know that Hayley from Dance North is in the Zoom today. Hi, Hayley. We had a few days in the theatre at Dance North, in the theatre space. And I remember we got in and we were just like, so overwhelmed, like, what do we do in here? Like, we'd totally forgotten what to do in these spaces. And we were trying to bring some of the stuff in, and we realised bringing something in is not about bringing the outside in. It's just about like taking inspiration, drawing from to bring in. Like, so this idea of like listening or really thinking about what's at play in the space. And actually the theatre space is vast too. So applying those methodologies to the theatre space. But to be fair, to try and answer your question, we've not actually done that yet. We've not tried to use those approaches in the theatre space because we are just enjoying still being outside. And if anything, I feel like we've maybe tried to apply stuff to film more than theatre, and try to get it to translate through film and writing a little bit more. So
yeah, I think I think that'll be, I feel like maybe we're both craving now working in the theatre though as well. That's maybe like the next step for like maybe our solo practices as well, is actually getting back into that. But I think we needed time away from that to want to get back into it as well.
Mm-hmm.
You were reflecting in your talk, and I'm really glad that that article, the Augusto Corriere article, was useful. But for those of you who don't know it, he talks about minor and major kind of dramaturgies, and it's all about it's about expanding beyond the theatre, isn't it? It's about taking everything into account as part of the kind of dramaturgy and world of the theatre, and encouraging this move away, as you were saying, from the anthropocentric, theatre as a human art form of humans talking to humans about human stuff, and actually what else can kind of performance encompass. And as you were speaking, I was remembering like some of the tasks that we were doing on the beach, which was like trying to foreground the activities of more than human beings. And I was really struck by that throughout your work, and it was making me think about what provokes your choreographies. And you referred to tide times as one of the things, and that's something I've also done in my own work. Tide times as being the thing that allows you to engage with a particular landscape, or doesn't. But you were also talking about the other things that you were encountering on the beach, the dogs and the birds. And I was just interested if you could speak a little bit more, because I think often in art making, there's this idea that it's all coming from the self, it's all coming from ideas of self-expression or autobiography. And I'm interested in taking your directives from other other things in the world, and the fact that maybe as artists it's less that we're making stuff, it's more that we're drawing attention to things, or noticing things, or curating people's view on things in a particular way. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about this movement language, or the way in which you were sort of stepping back and letting other more than human things direct you in some way.
Well, I actually remember one of the first days that we had together. Sinead and I had read something. Sinead had read an article and I'd read an article, and then we'd created a task that was based off of the article, the ideas that the article had explored. And Sinead had read the Augusto Corriere article and had thought of a bunch of different tasks inspired by the ideas. And one was, she had to get me to make a 1-minute performance on the beach where I had to be not center stage, and I just found it super difficult. And then the second task was, how can I make a 1-minute performance where something external to me, or the more than human, determines the length of the performance? And I remember, I think one of the ones I did was whenever a bird flew up into the sky, and the time that it was in the sky before it dropped back down into the sea, because they were doing a lot of this, I would make a sound, or I would go, oh. So we had this funny performance where we were both standing at the sea, and I was making these sounds. And it took a while to suss out what was determining the length of each performance. So it really made you look actually at scale as well. And that was the beginning of, I think, quite a practice that we did quite a lot.
Yeah. I think it was like, the first task, trying to not make the human center stage, felt really impossible when you look at like a kind of anything, actually, when you look at anything and a human walks past, your eyes are like automatically drawn to them, never mind if they're walking past in a kind of performative with purpose manner that we would do at the beach. Yeah, so it felt really impossible, but then kind of started to work in that way where something else was dictating the length of an action or a sound or a performance. And it was like maybe not taking humans out of the center stage, but it was certainly shifting your view. And where the human in the performance was just as much part as the bird or as the sky. And I think it's maybe we started to learn that we can't remove the human actually, but we can kind of reduce the hierarchy or the distance between the things, and that was what actually became more interesting, I think, is like how can your attention between these things can constantly shift so that you notice the changes, the subtle changes in like the birds flying or how many birds there are, or a dog passing, or a cloud shifting. I don't know, all the little things, which became quite fun as well.
We were performing, we had like different parameters, you know, when a dog walked past we would bow, when a bird flew to the sky we would raise our arms, when someone walked to the left we would lean to the left and things like this. And we ended up loving doing those performances. We would do them for like 20 minutes just standing in the sea. And Laura, you came to one of the days and watched it, and we just have funny interactions with people as well, because they knew something was going on, but because they were also trying to figure it out, what are the rules here in this little performance. And that was nice, because then it gets someone else to also look and engage with the environment in a different way.
It was quite funny because kids started to play with us as well, because we were bowing to the dog and they thought we were bowing to them, and then they were like kind of running in front of us to see if that would like change our action, and that kind of, I guess that, you know, when we were talking about the things in the space influencing how we move, I guess it's like there's other humans in the space as well that are also part of that space.
And I think there's something quite interesting, you said, Laura, there, movement language. There's something quite interesting about our movements. They were very gesture based, actually. We weren't doing kind of improv based dance on the beach. It was very gesture focused, because I think we wanted to really just start simple, and it kind of continued to be quite gesture based throughout, which is just quite an interesting thing that happened.
It's a very human thing, isn't it, as well?
You talked a wee bit at the very beginning about the kind of ecological sort of underpinnings, and you know, we are working together just now asking questions about what art can do, and maybe one of the things it can do is just try to destabilize or subvert or question some of the hierarchies of the of the human. And I was interested in your kind of audiences, you know, obviously when you're working in this environment, and you mentioned you've been focusing on process and research, and I was thinking of the difference of this kind of project to a sort of a conventional kind of theatre making project. Partly time, you've had the time to really do this in a way, but I was also thinking about audiences and those people and other beings kind of engaging in your work. And I'd love to hear what were the kind of responses, or how do you capture what you've just captured for us in your exchange talk within a 2-minute interaction with a dog walker on Irvine Beach? How do you communicate what you're doing in to a range of different audiences, I suppose?
All the conversations were quite different, I think. It would depend on the person, and maybe and what we were doing. I think a few of them were quite like brief interactions where someone would just be like, "Are you doing an art project?"
That's good.
Like, yeah, we are. And that was enough information for them to be like, "Cool, it's great." And then some people, like when we spent a lot of time in Findhorn, beach, someone like kind of followed us and then walked past again. Not that sounds really creepy, but in a really like kind of sweet manner actually. And
and she dropped her own stones because she wanted to join in. Yeah.
And and that kind of became a big part of the day actually. Yeah. That this kind of person wanting to join in, and like I guess our way of having that conversation wasn't a verbal dialogue; it was more of an action dialogue, which was really interesting as well. I think it would depend as well. Sometimes we would just be quite open and honest about what we're doing as well. Not that just like, oh, we're moving our arm when a bird passes, and just being very like
task kind of action focused about it, not like saying, oh, we've got this seeking spaces eroded, blah, blah, blah. Like just being like, that's the task at hand and that's what we're doing, and encouraging like, oh, we're just playing.
Yeah,
we're actually just
people
playing
wouldn't really
about.
question that. They'd be like, oh, cool.
Yeah. So
which
that
was
was
quite
interesting.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I really enjoyed I really enjoyed kind of like taking part in those tasks and performing those tasks. I enjoyed watching you perform and all of the atmosphere and the weather and everything that was part of that. But there was also something really lovely about getting those tasks and instructions and doing them. So yeah, it was really great. We've got a comment in the Q&A first of all, saying there's no response to the audio, but the image that you were sharing at the time was extraordinary. So thank you for that comment. And also a question from Craig Manson, who we must have been having the same thought at the at the same time, Craig, because your question is also about choreography. So Craig says, I liked how you were using the air to make choreography, measuring the beach with rocks from the earth, as well as the sea tides. Did the other three elements also lead you anywhere or connect to your research more broadly? Thanks, Craig. So maybe you could speak a bit more about these materials. The air, the the beach, the rocks, as well as the actual sea, and maybe some thoughts on how they connect to your wider research. Because I'm thinking the sea has provided you with this tidal approach, but has any of the other elements of those coastal spaces kind of fed into that? Sorry, I sort of amended your question, Craig.
That always came up for us, no matter how many times we went to the beach, we'd be like, it's so overwhelming when you arrive, because like there's so many time elements here, the tiny grains of sand, you know, the amount of times they're washed, how old is that grain of sand, you know, it's just like so loaded with time. And so I think when we were working with the rocks, there was something about time there, and the fact that working with that element meant that we weren't bringing something in, we're putting something that was already there, but maybe just moving it a little bit. And the fact that in a few hours it would move anyway was what we enjoyed about that. And then when thinking about the air and the sky and the clouds, maybe it was something about the movement of that, or the transient quality, or ephemeral quality, choreographic qualities that they held anyway, that drew us to that, and they made us move, whereas the rocks maybe was more action based.
But I think maybe like the kind of time element there of like, really kind of thinking about how old those spaces are, and how long they've been kind of like eroding and moving in the sand, and the rocks really kind of maybe influenced in a broader way, like the slow making element more than a tidal rhythm. I feel like the tidal rhythm structure we're talking about is maybe more a rhythm of working and a rhythm of energy when we do things. But actually, I think the kind of slowness, or like staying with something for a long time, comes maybe more from like the age of the space and thinking about the history of the space, the length of time it's been there, and how we've got a short time here in comparison, which I think feeds into this idea around perspective as well, actually, and using these spaces to influence our ways of working, our methodologies, how we begin to like actually look to the future for our careers, like how we apply for stuff, where we feel we want to put time into, how we feel very confident now about speaking to funders or organizations about how much time we need for something, how much value there is in a long research period, and it'll take the time that it takes. You know, we're pretty like I don't know, very, very confident now about those kind of things that we need and how we want to work in that way.
The things you've just said are tapping into some of the amazing questions that have been popping up in the Q&A. So maybe I'll connect with Galia's question. Did this research change your definition of the human or change your feeling about what it means to be human?
Yes, probably.
So certain and then
I was
uncertain.
like, yes, yeah, because I realised I had to explain. Sometimes I'm not very good at. Okay, what it means to be human. Oh, I think for me, the answer that I'll give to that question is the Astrida Neymanis stuff, that kind of idea of my definition of the human maybe became more like water-based, or this idea of the fluidity or the connection between two bodies because of that wateriness, and what it means to be human in terms of water. What does that mean right now as well? You know, politically, culturally, geographically. You know, it's pretty loaded. So I think that's what came up for me.
Yeah.
I love the quote you shared, water is the most collaborative substance. I thought that was a fabulous quote from her. I'm going to try and see if we can get through the other questions before we finish. Ashanti says, it's lovely hearing about the different audiences you had when you were working on the beach, and also considering that was happening at a time when audiences were not in theatre spaces. Are there any ways that you might bring these interactions into your future theatre work?
Yeah. I'm just going to answer quickly. It makes me think about happenings and things being, future theatre work that I imagine to be outside, maybe not in a theatre setting, but imagine things, maybe if it's part of a festival, just kind of like happening outside, and those interactions. It's a lot easier when you're in a public space. So I'm not sure about how to bring it into theatre work that's like in a designated theatre space, but
yeah, definitely. So it just it's making me think of, I was reading Haley's question as well about urban and rural kind of locations throughout the project and how they differ, and how they all actually end up becoming one thing. But I guess there is like a big difference, and maybe this is also like just this theatre, this an outside space or non-performance spaces. Is it, yeah, they all become really different depending on how many humans are there. Actually, I feel like that's the biggest thing that changes it, or that, because there's always traces of humans wherever we are. Like, I don't think we've been anywhere anyway that we haven't seen traces. So yeah, I think you really start to think of like, yeah, our kind of impact, I guess, but also like influence while performing.
Yeah.
You know, like, I think we spoke about this with Rosemary Lee as well, and in like leaning, like not looking for like a kind of like beautifully untouched space to work in. Actually, we were kind of like really interested in like the industrial leftovers or husks that you might find on beaches, and not like ignoring that. We weren't like seeking beautiful wild spaces. Actually, we were more interested in the ones where we were present, humans were present.
Thank you so much for managing to capture a response to that final question. We are out of time, so I just want to say, thank you both so much, Anya and Sinead. I feel like we could keep talking about the sea for a lot longer, and thank you also to our audience for coming tonight to our exchange talk. Just a reminder that you can follow all of the talks at the RCS Twitter, which is at RCS_the exchange. And the talk next week will be by Una McGlone, who's from RCS, and Guro Johansson, who's from the Norwegian Academy of Music, and that will be at 6 p.m. next Monday. So yeah, thank you both so much again, and yeah, have a good rest of the evening. Bye everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.